Attention, soldiers! You are now entering the war zone. Please keep close to your compatriots and have your weapons at the ready. If you would like to skip the introduction, please fast forward to about 7.5 minutes. And now, poets at war.
Once, there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy.
Suppose I'm writing a novel. I write, Mary laid down her book. Next moment came a knock at the door. For Mary, who's got to live in the imaginary time of the story, there's no interval between putting down the book and hearing the knock. But I, her creator, between writing the first part of that sentence and the second, may have gone out for an hour's walk and spent the whole hour thinking about Mary.
We make things by the law in which we are made. We create because we are created.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, in the darkness bind them.
Tolkien and Lewis, both in their way, lifted me out of this world to show me a thundering beauty. And when I read the last sentence and came tumbling back to earth, I could still hear the peal. I hear it to this day. God allowed those stories to lift the veil on the imaginary world to show me the real world behind it, which ended up being, in the end, the one I was already in. The real world, at least in part, isn't out there somewhere, nor is it in my mind. It's here, right under my feet, all around me. Tolkien and Lewis held the fabric of Narnia or Middle-earth in one hand and clutched our world in the other, building a bridge across which we could set out for perilous realms, and yet return safely with some of the beauty we found there.
My first and last philosophy, that which I believe in with unbroken certainty, I learnt in the nursery. I generally learnt it from a nurse, that is, from the solemn and star-appointed priestess at once of democracy and tradition. The things I believed most then, the things I believe most now, are the things called fairy tales.
We live in a moment that's unlike any other moment, a moment of bizarre tyranny, a moment of overreach.
I was nearly torn apart by a crazy doctor.
A moment of fear. It's like, and how are we living? How are we standing up in this moment?
I was made asleep by a bunch of mangy pirates.
Are we full of joy? Like, are we characters who are full of joy and unafraid?
And eaten. Got that? Eaten by a fire-breathing dragon. And not to mention being tossed, squashed, and scared practically to death.
It's like, how do we image God in this particular narrative in which we've been placed, in this chapter? And we get trained for that by reading about Sam and Frodo and Aragorn and Gandalf, and reading, Charlotte's Web and Animal Farm, and reading about Prince Caspian. Like, when you're little, you read those things and you read stories when you're older, and it reinforces what is the courageous action of a character in this moment.
Yet you stand before me.
Well, yeah.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I brought you here with a turn of the page?
I wept bitterly, and then I said to myself, when everything happens quite miserably, then He sends help. I have always read so. People must first of all suffer a great deal before they can bring anything to accomplishment.
God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the worlds.
For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of Him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves, groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body.
minstrel boy to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you'll find him. His father's sword he hath girded on, and his wild harp slung behind him. God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall praise thee. The minstrel fell, but the foeman's chain could not bring that proud soul under. The harp he loved ne'er spoke again, for he tore its cords asunder, and said, no chain shall sully thee, thou soul of love and bravery. Thy songs were made for the pure and free, they shall never sound in slavery. The chains upon the people came, and they gave away their freedom. No prophets left, they then grew lame, they accepted their false kingdom. But one young man saw the minstrel boy, and he took up the shredded strings, and with great love remade with joy the sacred tool for truth to sing.
I just rewatched the first 30 minutes of Atlantis,
Uh-huh.
so that was my refresher. I watched it. I posted about it in the Brood.
I gotcha. How long has it been since you've seen it?
Before that, it'd been probably close to 5 years, which is
Gotcha.
way too long. It is so good.
It is really good.
Like, I mean, this is what I said in the Brood. I do not understand how it's as good as it is.
Joss Whedon, that's how. He's an incredible writer.
He is. But
hello, Brendan.
He and the crew had to have known what they were doing, right?
I think
they had
so.
To have.
Yeah. They knew exactly what they were doing. The thing was, Disney didn't want them to do it.
Yes.
Then how did it come out as good as it is?
We'll talk about that just a minute.
What are we talking about?
Just talk about Atlantis already, because he's Miss Jenny jumped the gun.
I will not apologize.
It's okay.
I'm struggle busting over here because this stupid boom arm, I have it as tight as it can go, and it's still sliding up.
Yeah.
There we go.
So I got the sounds in my Stream Deck on my iPad, so they're a touch away.
Oh no.
I have a clip it button, so I have all of that. That's nice.
Clip it button. It's a paper clip with two big googly eyes.
Clippy, yeah, from Microsoft.
Bring back Clippy. If Microsoft doesn't bring back Clippy in some way, shape, or form, at least it's like an April Fool's thing, powered by AI.
Yeah, totally.
What are you doing, guys?
I don't want an April Fool's thing. Give me Clippy back.
What about the
He was
search
afraid.
dog?
I agree.
Do you guys remember the search dog from Windows XP?
What?
Oh,
Wow,
yeah.
you don't remember this?
Yeah.
He
I
does.
remember the Windows.
Nah. I
Look
used
up-
Windows 98. I used Windows 98, then Vista, then 7.
Oh, okay, so you missed
Yeah.
XP.
Those are the
Weird.
Windows that I've used. Well,
Uh,
XP canceled a lot of support for several games that my dad played, and
Right.
that's why he had his computer.
Apparently
So-
Apparently his name was Rover. If you look up Microsoft Rover, you'll see him. He's
Checking
very,
it out.
very
Not looking.
Windows XP.
Okay, XP is the one that everybody hates, right? No,
No.
Vista is the one that everybody
Vista's
hates.
the one that
Everybody likes
everyone
XP.
hates. Yes.
Yeah, Vista was straight up worse than XP.
Yep.
Okay, then.
What's interesting is XP is probably the greatest for like 95, 98 games, not DOS games, but like 95, 98 Windows games. XP like runs almost everything. It's actually great for that, and I use it more than any other Windows operating system for emulation type stuff, like VirtualBox emulation. So, but yeah, your dad probably had DOS, and I think DOS was pretty much canceled with XP, if I remember correctly. So,
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I was not into computers enough at the time to be able to tell you exactly why. I just know that he kept it at Windows 98.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, there were a lot of reasons to do that, but oh goodness.
Okay.
So, gents, we're here. We've talked a
Yes.
lot today. That was weird.
We have.
That was
Good.
nice though. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Atlantis. You're already like rearing and ready to jump out of the gate. I have no problem. I have no problem with you jumping if you want to, but let me say this first. Why am I blanking? I had something and it was very brief. I had
We're just throwing people to Stories or Soul Food.
I mean, that was really awesome. And it was all the stuff that we normally talk about, but better and on another level. And you could tell that they weren't using it like Zoink Scoob. I wasn't using 5% of my power. Whatever. To use meme culture jokes. For real though, like I could tell this was like a leisurely stroll through a conversation of softballs for them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate that because yeah, on one level that's the deeper conversations we're having, but then I hear other people who are on another level even below that, and I'm like, man, we need to keep rising up, to where our conversations are that leisurely on that kind of level, but then we're having even crazier discussions behind the scenes.
Yeah, 100%. A little bit of context for anybody listening. Stories of Soul Food dropped a new podcast episode with Indy Wilson and Doug TeNapel. I think it's their longest episode to date. It's like an hour, 45 minutes or something like that. And it's just them talking about artists and art culture.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it was more than that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fantastic episode. As Joshua said, talking about all the things that we kind of talk about here. Not sure why we as a smaller podcast are throwing people to the significantly larger podcast of Stories or Soul Food, but
because it was that good.
It's definitely worth listening to. It's so good.
Yeah.
But what are the chances that anyone listening to this doesn't listen to Stories or Soul Food?
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
I meant to ask you that. You first started listening to me because of Knox Unplugged because we had Jason Farley on. That was where you first started listening to me when I was doing the solo shows and whatever else. Where did you start listening to Knox Unplugged because of? What was the thread that direction?
So I was listening to Cross Politic, catching up on it, and I decided, seems like a decent way to do this would just to be go through all of the episodes that they've ever released, and so I started methodically from the latest episode to the earliest episode, listening to all of Nox Unplugged. Just like loading it into my queue and letting it sit in the background through my entire day because I always have one of these in my ear. Running at 3x speed, all that fun stuff.
Logical thing? No, that never happens. Have him read
I know.
things in order? Never.
So out of character for me. But I was going through and there were these, 3 or 4 episodes that I was just like, oh, that's super interesting. I don't understand like 90% of what's being said, but what I do understand is super cool. And then I got to one that was like, oh, this is really interesting, and I understand. They're introducing all this type of stuff. Has this guy been on the show before? It's like, oh, all of the episodes that I super enjoyed but didn't know what they were talking about. Yeah, it's this guy, and so is Nox Unplugged on the Cross Politic feed.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
I feel like if somebody Alex trusted and respected told him that he would gain like significant understanding about the world by reading the Encyclopedia Britannica cover to cover, he would do it. Yeah, exactly.
He gestured
Courtship
to the
interrupted
wall
my
behind
reading
him.
through of this in a year and a half. But yeah, I'd probably do that.
For those listening and not watching, he's gesturing to his how many feet bookshelf of Harvard
it's 5
collection?
Foot set of books. It's the Harvard Classics.
Yeah, Harvard Classics 5 foot bookshelf.
Harvard Classics.
Mm-hmm.
Hazel,
Liberal
close my
education.
door when you
5
go to
feet of
bed,
bookshelf.
okay? Yes,
So,
Hazel.
Yeah. By the way, just so you know, there is a at least
Hold on,
possibility
Hazel needs
that,
me. Hold on. Come here.
Yep. Do.
We're gonna be so terribly disjointed and out of sync with each other.
Yeah. But still, it's gonna be good. We're providing, elevator music, filler music. I've got a great song. I've got a great elevator music song. It's called Elevator Hope. It's very good.
Do you know the oh my gosh, Undertale soundtrack at all?
Yeah.
You know that,
Megalovania, at least.
Oh, well, there's a song that's like bum ba 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 da da ba da ba ba da 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 bum bum bum, and it's got this little boppy thing. I don't remember what it's called, but I now want a version that sounds like that 8-bit sort of dum doo 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 doo, like very choppy, very staccato version of the Warrior Bard.
I'm sure we can make that
I could
happen.
do that. Yeah, I could easily make that.
Yeah, exactly.
See,
that'd be funny.
my go-to would try to make it sound like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. But the minstrel boy, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. All of these would be amazing. Jubal's wardrobe just becomes 30,000 covers of the minstrel boy.
There you go.
Of different types, like, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyhow.
All right.
I've listened to all of them.
So, when was the last time you watched Atlantis, Brendan?
Front to back, years ago. In bits and pieces, today.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was
cool.
trying to do research, but yeah, no, Atlantis definitely was one of the films that I actually liked a lot. I remember.
Okay. I just wanted
So-
to see how rearing and ready you were, because Mr. Chompy at the bit over here is ready to rock and roll. So I may just turn him loose to begin things.
Yeah,
if
no.
you're fine with
well,
that.
well, I feel like I'm like, unless I'm on one of my soapboxes, I feel like I'm a lot better at just sort of like going, hey,
soapbox, soundboard, yay!
soundboard. I feel like I'm a lot better at just sort of like throwing bombs in. So let's go.
Cool.
Let loose the ravenous Alex or something. I don't know.
Go for it, bro.
I don't think I've ever been described as ravenous before.
I'm not
You
sure that's the
have
right
now.
word. I do not think that word means what you think it means. I need that on the soundboard. Make a note.
It doesn't. That's
Anyway.
fine.
Yes, absolutely 100%.
Yes.
Okay, so up until, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, something like that, I hadn't seen this movie in 5 years, something around there. Watched the first third of it again just now, right before I came up here, but holy cow, how did Disney make something this incredibly amazing? Is my primary
really
thought.
good.
It's so good. It's so good. Like it's downright covenantal in its like overarching storyline. Like what was it? Your grandfather had a saying, "Our lives are measured by the gifts we leave our children."
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did they flabbergasted? That's the right word. I was flabbergasted by exactly how good it was. I mean, the writing is on point. It's incredible. All of the crew are so well characterized. It's so good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't Disney like this anymore? Is there a back button that I can press?
As
Because
far
I'll
as the
press
back
it.
button, as far as the back button,
Go
probably
back.
not.
I said
but,
go back.
Okay, so starting with Toy Story, which wasn't Disney but was Disney, you know the weirdness that was Toy Story and all that kind of stuff. The creators at Disney were getting tired of the Renaissance formula. They wanted to do a few more of them, but they didn't want to just do that. They felt like they were being pigeonholed, generally speaking. That was the general consensus of the actual artists making the movies. And one of the largest places that they wanted to go into is things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and other sorts of like male forward adventures, particularly like the big one was Treasure Planet. They wanted to make Treasure Planet be, you know, this epic steampunk version of Treasure Island, because I mean Treasure Island's such an amazing story, and they wanted to do Sherlock Holmes, and they wanted to do, you know, all these other sorts of like boy stories, these pulp fiction, you know, adventures, instead of just fairy tales, right? They wanted to, because they put them on the same pedestal, and rightly so for the most part, you know. That's why we got Tarzan. That kind of started with Tarzan and then changed from there. But they were starting to get their way, and the executives didn't like it as much because, well, they didn't know how to market it. They didn't have a marketing machine behind it. And after a while of trying, they wanted to kill it because they thought it was going to make them less money. And yeah, basically that's it. They gave them a chance, and by the time Treasure Planet rolled around, they were just like, just finish up with what we're doing so we don't waste anything, but like get this out of here. And so one of the outliers during that period is Lilo and Stitch, but it still has an adventure feel to the whole thing. And it's a little bit more Looney Tunes mixed with adventure, but you know, still.
What was Katzenberg gone by this point in time?
I forget when Katzenberg left. Let me check. Well, keep talking about whatever about this.
Yeah,
Let's see.
Are all executives the same, or is Katzenberg just a poison? It is basically the question that I have.
Well,
keep in mind, Go ahead. No, go ahead.
What do you mean? What do you mean by all executives? Is what I have to ask.
All media executives specifically. I'm sure that there are good people at an executive level in some company somewhere.
it's the if we're talking in general, they are all like this. Katzenberg might be particularly problematic, but he is not unique in his focus on the bottom line in return on investment.
So he was long gone at this point. He was at 94 he actually left, like right around the Lion King.
Okay.
So that's when he left. But keep in mind, Eisner's the man at the helm, and he has more power now for a lot of reasons. Frank Wells died, who was the other CEO person at the time. He died in I don't know if you know much about Frank Wells, but he was a thrill seeker guy, but he looked like a total nerd. He was basically the number cruncher guy, as far as I can tell. And he died, unfortunately, in I think it was a ski accident or something of that nature. And Michael Eisner ended up basically, there was going to be another role, and Katzenberg was up for it. And he didn't promote Katzenberg, and that's one of the big reasons Katzenberg left. He just basically absorbed Frank Wells's role in his own job. So a lot of executive drama, all that sort of a thing. But the main function, I think, had more to do with the disparity between the marketing department, who wanted to keep pounding the formula to get the return, and the executives who didn't want to go into boys stuff because they had built such a cash cow around girl stuff. They basically had the girl stuff market cornered, and all the other animation studios at the time, even Don Bluth was doing like Titan AE, everything was going sci-fi, and they realized they had to do some of that too because everyone was like Turn of the Millennium sci-fi stuff, and so they had to compete. But it was essentially just kind of like, we want to get back to the princesses, which is funny because then they got back to the princesses eventually after some weird dark times, and no one liked the princesses anymore. But we'll get to that as we're talking through the princesses. Of course, this one is being brought up in our princess series because of Kita, which we will get to her a little bit, but she's not a entirely central character. She's important, but yeah, I guess that being your biggest question, did I mostly answer it, Alex, as far as the weirdness of that time?
Yeah, that's not actually my biggest question. I just thought that it would be at least a decent jumping off point because it is so different from everything else. Like, as you were saying, everybody was tired of the formula, and you can tell that they cared about it so much.
Yes.
Like, even the computer animation. Like, looking back at the first time we saw computer animation in one of these with the Black Cauldron, it's so much better. It's still not perfect. Like, it doesn't match the style of the hand-drawn stuff, but it matches the feel, I guess you could say.
You know what's funny? The one that really, I feel like, was one of the very, very first... I mean, there's scenes in Beauty and the Beast that, like, really do a great job of blending CG and real animation, for sure. But I think that the first film that actually, like, did it throughout the film, and it was really, like, seamless and amazing, ironically, is The Prince of Egypt, which was Katzenberg's big project afterward. And he did that big project because he essentially wanted to beat all these artists at their same game. He wanted to do something big and epic, you know, and adventure and blah, blah, blah. So he was like, 10 Commandments, animated.
I was going to say, whenever he thought whenever he thought big and epic, he went to the Bible.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think it's kind of like, I get the wanting to compete with the sci-fi, and so they head in that direction. But the idea, like, it's not that it's fairy tales versus other stories. It's that it's it's stories focusing on female characters versus stories focusing around male characters, which is interesting because Aladdin doesn't fit that either.
Correct. Aladdin doesn't fit that at all. I would argue Aladdin's more of an outlier, and they really actually started to try and focus on the boy market with Hercules. They really
Yeah.
wanted to start
Hercules is
moving in that
another.
direction with Hercules, and they tried to literally copy paste, essentially like just gender flip the formula with Hercules. And
Yeah.
it didn't work. It didn't work very well. But I would argue that the last great song until we get to Princess and the Frog, that's a
Go the
Disney proper
Distance?
song. Yeah, Go the Distance. I
Yeah.
would argue that one. I think there's good stuff in Mulan, but it's not great. And anything after that for a while is non-musical. It's not Broadway. It's not character driven, right? Until we get to Princess and the Frog. So like, it's really weird
with the very, very odd exception of the one villain song from Home on the Range.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
that's not
going
a
to point
great
that out.
musical song.
It's not, but it's
I just-
definitely character driven.
Oh yeah.
It is the weird.
is funny.
That movie is just a very weird exception. Just wanted to point that out. Nobody ever
fever
talks about
dream.
Home on the Range, and it needs to be talked about.
I agree.
Well, the only
Anyway,
reason
go
why I
ahead,
mentioned that
Brendan.
is because there are plenty of fairy tale stories that include boys, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if you count Saint George and the Dragon as a fairy
I
tale
do.
exactly, but
I would.
you've got that. You've got well, anyway, I know I just said one example and then not, but I'm tired. I had a long day. The point is, one of the things they could have done was actually flip. Instead of going from sci-fi, they're like, we want to lean into fairy tales and then just include St. George, right? That's still fairy tale stuff. But it's not, because that's not the formula. Their formula was specific to princesses for some reason. And that bugs me. Sorry, it does. Because,
yeah,
again, the only movie that I felt connected to was Treasure Planet, sort of. Fantasia, which doesn't count because it's not a plot-driven movie. And I guess Aladdin, but even then, I was just kind of like, Genie's cool. That's why I like watching Aladdin, is because of Robin Williams' Genie.
Yeah.
And Tarzan is good because
Lion King.
you've got that character thing.
Lion King's fantastic.
You can mention Lion King in that sense. Yeah. It's about Simba.
Yeah, you can mention Lion King in that sense, yeah, but I don't know. I wasn't as big a fan of Lion King because I got scared by the shadowy area when I was a little kid.
The elephant
I
graveyard,
was very sensitive. Yeah, I was a sensitive kid. All the green fire was just creeped me out. Anyway.
So with
but
that,
no,
I wanted to pose. Well, can I pose a question? We're talking about all this, and it's almost kind of like, what if?
You're not allowed to pose you're not allowed to pose a question on this show.
On my own show? My goodness! Okay, so for real though, we keep kind of asking what if without kind of answering it. I want to know what would have happened if these were such a big hit that Disney ended up going in a more adventure-based direction instead of essentially rebooting with Home on the Range all the way. Basically, you kind of start with Home on the Range where they decide 2D isn't worth it anymore for a while, and then they do things like Chicken Little and Meet the Robinsons. As good as right, Meet the Robinsons is at least enjoyable, but it's not great. Yeah,
incredible.
That's But
I really like Meet the Robinsons.
So they kind of went back to the adventure thing on that a little bit, but and the sci-fi, but what would it have looked like? I have a feeling
Quest for
that
Camelot.
Quest for Camelot. You think? I think it would have looked. Go ahead.
I think that if they had gone in the adventure direction, they would have gone into Quest for Camelot. They probably would have done Beowulf, but heavily kid, because let's be honest, if you look at some of the fairy tales, they get kidified down, right? But they could have done Beowulf. They could have done any Arthur legend they wanted to. Sorry, I'm looking across at my shelf of various things, just pulling out.
And these are just fantasy.
Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, this is all just fantasy
Disney's
stuff.
Beowulf.
Well, like you
My
mentioned
word.
earlier, St. George and the Dragon, we kind of get that with Philip in Sleeping Beauty just a little bit, but I mean it's just shadows of it,
we
right?
don't.
Right.
Philip
it's just
is a
shadows of that.
non-character.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Agreed.
barely an archetype.
Yeah. And then like there's so many things that could be done. I every time I hear I Can Go the Distance, I'm like they nailed it. I know that they're just gender flipping the I Want song, but like I have a feeling that song would have hit so much harder in the marketplace had Hercules not been so goofy. If they had done a more serious Hercules, and they would have had grounds to start doing all this other sci-fi stuff. They would have had grounds to start pushing in that direction. But the worst example of the goofy humor, trying to recreate the genie humor, we talked about this recently. I would argue the worst example is Hunchback of Notre Dame. Those three gargoyles are absolutely annoying, and they just totally take away from all the drama of the movie. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To be honest, I forgot about the gargoyles.
Now, I will say,
I hear that the Broadway is a lot better.
Well, I hear in the Broadway they actually did what was the original idea, which was making it unbelievably clear that these gargoyles are literally just like imaginary friends in Quasimodo's life because he's that lonely. You do that properly and you play up the tragedy of that loneliness with the goofy silliness, that can work. But they didn't do that in the movie. But yeah, I just
for my stab stab as to what would happen had these been a really, really big success, I see two possible ways that it could have gone. If Atlantis did super well and Treasure Planet did not, I think that we would have gotten. I want to say Hamilton.
What?
I want to say that they would have gone for more history focus.
Yeah,
like because Atlantis is like pseudo historical. Like Plato is credited as a writer on the movie.
Yeah,
which is super interesting.
That's funny. That's funny.
It's really good. But I could see like a weird alternate history where they like go Mulan direction, Atlantis direction, and start like taking characters from history and Disneyfying them. But that's their story engine.
That's also if Pocahontas did better than it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I think the other alternate timeline that you can look at is Treasure Planet does well, Lilo and Stitch does super well. You start going into sci-fi and you get somebody like George Lucas to come in and actually direct an animated film.
See, and that, well, if we want to just hop back to the other timeline for the briefest of moments, like because Treasure Planet, yeah, it takes a historical place, right?
Yes.
What I think you get from that is I think you get animated Uncharted.
Okay.
Not necessarily the Uncharted, like the Uncharted games, but something like Indiana Jones or some character discovering.
That was another thing that they were constantly referencing. Yeah. Indiana Jones was something they were constantly referencing as like things that they wanted to do in animation. And so like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, those, Goonies, films like that were just like fully adventure based. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask the what if fully before we get into specifics of things we liked in the movie and whatnot. But yeah, go ahead.
I'd throw one more thing into the Treasure Planet timeline. If it did super well, I think that we would have gotten more adaptations of classics in an interesting way. Specifically, I'm thinking an animated version of 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
20,000, yeah.
Yeah, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Journey to the Center of the Earth. I think that they would have adapted Jules Verne, because those are so ripe for Disney adaptation. Like, the Brendan Fraser Journey to the Center of the Earth movie is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good moments. It's pretty fun, solid action flick. An animated version of Journey to the Center of the Earth or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with the writing of Atlantis. Anything close to the writing of Atlantis. The writing of Treasure Planet here, take my money.
Right.
Like that. I think that those are the two timelines: historical and then like old style science fiction.
Right. So I guess getting into some of the things we like. One of the things that I think really stands out in this is they went hard with the side characters and created what essentially amounts to a Joss Whedon ensemble cast. This is Joss Whedon's like go-to thing. This is one of the things that he's known for, is creating an ensemble cast of characters that you just want to know everything about them the second they walk on screen. And all of them are interacting.
Character.
Who was that?
What?
Vinny is the best character in my opinion.
Vinny is a great character.
Is Vinny the bomb guy?
Yes.
Yeah, he's really fun. You know who I think is underrated is the guy who actually sends Milo on the quest. I forget his name.
Oh yeah.
I think he's really, really fun. His whole monologue and stuff at the beginning and talking to Milo about it and pep talking him into the journey.
Mr. Westmore.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so good.
But yeah, I mean, Joss Whedon, this is what he does. He gets a bunch of really great characters who all have extremely unique voices and then just turns the machine on and lets them talk to each other. And it is so entertaining because when you really think about it, there's not a ton plot-wise that happens very quickly in the movie. The plot just kind of slowly unfolds over the whole course of the movie, and the only reason we care is because every single one of these characters is super important. Now, the one character that I think was very one note overall and started a chain of things that I don't like in Disney, actually, that we're still dealing with, is the twist villain.
It's barely a twist villain, though. I
know. It's so foreshadowed.
It's barely a twist villain. His
so...
first line in the movie is literally, "I think this will be highly profitable for us all," or something like enriching for us all, or something like that.
He's about as much of a twist villain as Clayton.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, basically.
It's yeah. He's only.
But I think if we don't have him
for the protagonist.
But if I think we don't have him, we don't have Hans in Frozen. We don't have like all these horrible twist villains that we're dealing with now.
I'm willing to get rid of Rourke to get rid of Hans. I'll make that trade. Because I think that you could have an antagonistless movie with Atlantis.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough there that you could do that.
Yes, you could.
Maybe
you go the Moana route. Ancient curses have to save the day. Yeah, you could totally do it.
You might be able to. You definitely would be able to with AI in 3 years. Let's say I'm gonna bet 3 years with AI.
There you go.
You could re-edit Atlantis, edit Rourke out, or edit his character to be different than the way he is. Much more minor than he is, and you could have all of the natural disasters be done by something else, match the animation style with AI. I'm pretty sure that it would take less than 10% of the film to change that character.
Yeah, probably. So what else do we like, dislike, etc.? What do we got, Brendan?
I mean, I think you nailed it on the head with it. It's a Joss Whedon. Put a bunch of characters in a box and shake the box and see what happens. Like the Milo slowly becoming ingratiated to the group worked really well. Milo being the conscience of the group at the end there worked really well. The mechanic girl whose name is slipping my mind at the moment. Audrey. Her being the first person to walk over and stand with Milo makes sense. All of these things line up and click correctly. Excuse me. There's a bunch of little humor, like the fact that Milo they're troubleshooting the hover bike, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, "Did you turn the thing? Yes, I did that. Did you do this? Yeah, I did that. Did you do this? I did that. Did you do it with your hand on the thing? I Oh, hold on." That whole sequence, it's such a they do such a good job of not just writing the characters, but putting situations that are almost like, I don't want to say cliche, but almost like classical situations, putting
Mhm.
them in, and they just work. Like
Mhm.
not like an, oh, it's just magic, right? But it's like they've changed it enough, and they did all of their work that they needed to build up to it.
Mhm.
It just they did a really good job with the whole, like, how different the characters are and giving them, you know, more deep backstories and stuff. And
Mhm.
again, Vinny's my
And
favorite. Hey,
and
look,
I
I made a
just
bridge. It took me 10 seconds, 12 tops.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd just like to point out, once again, a testament to how good of a writer Joss Whedon is. Mole has a deep backstory. Because you don't ever get it from him. You hear that Sweet says, "You don't want to know. Audrey told me she shouldn't have, and now I'm telling you, you don't want to know." That
Yep.
tells you so much about his backstory without telling you anything.
Right, exactly. You're like, who is
It's
this
so good.
weirdo among weirdos? Like, good gracious.
I'm gonna
What
be
is?
honest.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know that Joss Whedon actually wrote Atlantis, but now that I do know that, everything makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, good gracious! You know, two other characters I definitely want to point to. Cookie, voiced by Jim Varney.
Yes.
They got our 4 basic food groups: whiskey, bacon, lard, something else I can't remember. Sugar, whiskey, bacon, lard.
beans, and lard.
Lard, there it is. And then Wilhelmina, the Mrs. whatever her face is,
Yeah.
just totally like
Packard.
Packard, yeah. There's just so many moments where she does not give a rip so hard that it is absolutely hilarious.
It's so good.
Yeah, just so fantastic stuff. No, like, this is exactly how adventure is supposed to be done, because adventure, in my opinion, is especially things like Indiana Jones, because we're not following nearly as much of the hero's journey. We're actually moving away from that in this category. We are literally going into a place where we don't know what's going to happen, and that's part of the joy of the story. And not knowing what comes next around what corner and that sort of a thing leads to a certain aimlessness, and the way you fix that and fill it up, and this goes back to things like Treasure Island, you fill it with unforgettable characters like Long John Silver, who's just one of the most complicated characters in all of literature. And the story of Treasure Island is not complicated, but John Silver is, right? I'm gonna clip that for sure. But yeah, I was gonna say, getting back to Kita, what did we think of the Atlantis society? Because they pulled the Tolkien and did a whole language. Like, they did ridiculous amounts of work to try to make this thing feel realistic, even when in an animated movie.
And it worked.
I think so, but I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that, and then we can go to Kita specifically. But like, yeah, like, what did you think of Atlantis, the characters who were Atlantean, the whole 9 yards?
My first thought is that as a world builder, it's fantastically well built. It's really, really well built, subtly.
Right.
Because it's not in your face about it, but if you're looking for like consistency of, okay, they have unlimited power. How does a society that has unlimited power, which has classically been the entire reason that societies have, formed, because they need to have like centers of power and stuff like that. So horses or anything of that kind. Power infrastructure in modern day. They have unlimited power. How do you build a society with unlimited power? Well, you're not going to allow a tyrant to rule. So you just have a king who's a good guy. And they have a king who's a good guy. Like it's actually a really decently well built, really well built. Not just decent. It's a really well built little civilization built off of that one principle, which is pulled from the stories that we have of Atlantis, of them being super advanced.
Right.
So in that sense, I'm really impressed by how much world building they were able to do in such a short amount of time. Like, it's a movie. There's a lot of people right now talking about the limitations of the movie as a form factor because it just doesn't have enough time to get a lot of stuff done, and TV shows have more time and allow for more freedom, and therefore TV shows are better. This and a lot of Disney stuff, a lot of classic Disney stuff, puts the lie to that, because you can pack so much into an hour 45 minutes. If you're just good at your job, if you're just good at what you're doing, you can do it. You can make your audience feel for characters with not all of the screen time in the world. Hello.
I need like some kind of pro wrestling run-in music for her to hit, that kind of a thing. Anyway, what's up? Good to see you. We're just recording Poets at War. Feel free to join in the conversation. We're talking about Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Brendan, you were next.
A few things. First of all, from a world building perspective, I didn't get to see all the scenes I wanted to recently, so I'm going to take your word on that. But one of the things that people confuse is exposition with world building. And they feel, the reason why people say, oh, you can do a better job over the course of a series than in a film, because you have a longer runtime. You don't want that, actually. Because what makes the world feel real is the stuff that's there that you don't draw attention to. This is why Jackson's Lord of the Rings was so good, and this was a hill I will die on. But
I'll die with you.
But here's the thing.
Spank that horse, Brendan.
Why did you have to add that on the soundboard?
Gotcha.
I'm going to cringe every time. Anyway, and that completely derailed my thought. Anyway, so yeah, Atlantis, yes, I will take. Yeah, the what you do not say is more important than what you do. That's the point. The powered society thing. Oh yeah, that's right. So Atlantis, to my memory, does a better job of Wakanda than Wakanda does.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean,
and I like Black Panther.
I'm going to open a can of worms and saying I didn't. But
it's okay.
And everybody's going to accuse me of being a white supremacist, and that's fine. But
what else is new?
CGI.
Yeah, exactly. But the way the power was used and how it wanes and why the nation couldn't use the power to take over the world, and the fact that they did offer an explanation for that was all incredibly helpful. Now, there are only two other things I want to mention. First of all, when the light shines on Kita and the thing that I thought was a spaceship initially, when the mother gets sucked up.
Did anyone else get Fifth Element vibes?
Well, what is the thing that she says is "be not afraid," and then she walks on water.
Yeah.
Hello. Very
once
obvious.
Again.
Very obvious Christological references, but who here remembers a Haunted Cosmos episode on Atlantis that they did? It wasn't even supposed to be on Atlantis. They just went to Atlantis, I think, for some reason. And talking about how Poseidon could have been a watcher and stuff like that. And I'm not going to go full Haunted Cosmos here, but the idea that the power is a conscious thing, even though they say that the power's consciousness comes from the people who were absorbed by it rather than before,
Mhm.
which is a little that kind of breaks it. But it's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is looking really like it goes back to
Mhm.
your rules, right? There are world building is all about rules functionally,
Yeah.
and so it was just really interesting. I guess
Mhm.
is what I'm
Yeah.
summing. If
And
I have to sum up what I'm saying because I'm rambling, it was interesting.
you can hand wave away it's the consciousness of all of the people who came before as that's their explanation.
Yeah, you can.
That's
Yeah,
a
it could be
really easy
an
world
unreliable
building
narrator.
hand wave.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the big reasons that a dying society is interesting at all is because it is juxtaposed with all these lively characters who are on an adventure.
Mhm. Yep.
They're essentially going to the halls of the dead to speak with the almost dead. Like it's
Mhm.
really like that harsh, that dark, and
Mostly dead.
right. They're only mostly dead. That's another one we need on the soundboard. Everything's gonna just be Princess Bride at this point on the soundboard.
Hey,
But
this is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think anyone has a problem with that.
it's true. It's true.
So long as we
Deb,
have Princess Bride and Spank That Horse.
there you go. By the way, for those who just heard the voice, that is Debbie. That is Alex's fiance. She's just popped in to join us, and that's perfectly fine with me. Family members can join at any point. Go ahead,
Because
Brendan.
Atlantis is well, okay. So when you say you were saying that it's so juxtaposed with the lively characters. Yes, it is juxtaposed to the lively characters. That's not incorrect. But when we were having a conversation in the brood, actually, no, this wasn't spoken. This was in the brood, just in chat, in the little group chat thing.
Everybody join the
when we were
brood. JoshuaDavidLing.com/brood. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you for
Specifically
taking
Discord.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my subtle hint to plug, Joshua. There we go. I was thinking about how people were talking about how Russell Brand recently became a Christian, specifically Catholic. We got what's his name?
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf. We got Candace Owens back. We got like, I know you don't like certain people, Alex, just deal with it. We've got, we have all of these different people who are turning specifically to Catholicism. Not Big Eva, specifically Catholicism.
Because there's nothing attractive about Big Eva. Let's be honest.
I'm going to throw another Roman Catholic convert that nobody likes to claim, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Also,
another one.
I will say one score for Big Eva was Justin Bieber. But anyway, continue.
That a score? That just takes Big Eva down the ladder even more. That's what that does.
No, but wait. But this is the point, right? Like the reason, my theory for why they're going specifically to Catholicism and not to what everyone is saying they should be going toward. Well, one, we know that God's ways are not our ways, if we're going to get all theological here, but also the depth and breadth of the ancient world and the world as ancient as it is not just more compelling, but more real. So when you go to the appeal of a dying society isn't just because it's juxtaposed with lively characters. From an aesthetic point, you're right. But it's also because I think even back when Atlantis was starting, people were particularly artists, but people in general were realizing subconsciously that we are rapidly moving toward becoming cardboard cutouts, toward becoming the thing that Milo was rejected by. These modern people who do not know truth because they've rejected the old. And so what is Milo's answer at the end? It's to stay in the old.
Yeah.
And become Catholic.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
stay in the old ways.
Like it's G.K. Chesterton's "After I have sought and plumbed the truth and I found orthodoxy," right?
I attempted to create my own heresy, and at the end I found out that it was orthodoxy.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%.
That all of the characters are like so attracted to Atlantis and like want to find it is that it's a better ideal than the world they're living in. Like it's a utopia that they're searching for that's been lost that they want to get back to. Like this. Kita is ancient. Like she has not gotten old. Like she's not dying, and she is like far older than Milo is because their society is like it has the magic of like the crystals and all of that and granted that, and so their society has been thriving better than the one Milo's been living in. Does that make sense?
Let me just point out too, this thing we're talking about, returning to the old, returning ad fontes to the fount, to the source, was a major point of the Reformation as well. And that's why we can say this as Reformed folk, because that's kind of the point of being Reformed. Ultimately, if you're at least following the logic of the way Reformed people think, you are returning to the older form of Christianity before the Catholic Church. Now, there are Catholics out there who aren't going to agree with that, and there's other forms of ideas surrounding those things, but that is what it is supposed to be in the end. And I think a lot of people in Protestant circles don't get that, because we've been so inundated for a century with liberal thinking in regard to, oh, well, do we have to sing that old stodgy, Scottish psalter anymore? And the answer is, well, we could do some other things too. That's what the answer should be. Let's do both. This isn't a one or the other, but get rid of the
but by
nonsense.
all means, let's throw in some Rich Mullins and some Andrew Peterson into the liturgy.
Amen,
just
brother.
Keep amazing grace psalms.
That's
all we're asking.
Let's do some tricks on those weird Atlantean bikes, that they've never seen in their thousands of years, right? Whatever, fine. But we're not changing the society. This is still Atlantis, right? This is still the church. Yeah, that gave us, the epistles and the prophets and all the rest, So, yeah.
And getting back to what Debbie was saying about the characters who are coming into Atlantis to look for this better world that they've heard has existed. Because even though they all say that it's for money, like it doesn't seem like it's proven that it's not by the end, because they leave Rourke and they stay with Milo. Even though that society isn't what they saw,
right,
or what they thought they were going to find. The society isn't perfect. The society is dying. The society is stuck in its ways and not going to survive without, somebody coming in and changing it.
Right.
It's not that they're against change. It's not that they're against things that are new. It's that they understand that modern society has lost something, which is what Debbie was saying. Right. They understand that there's a lack of something in modern society, and they're looking for something that older societies were lacking stuff too, but they weren't lacking the same stuff that we are.
Right.
So let's build from there again.
Yep. That is good stuff. I kind of want to end strong. How do you guys feel about that? We're an hour and 7 in. Do you want to do that? Okay. All right, everybody. We'll be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War. Join the brood! We want you! you guys are saluting? Like you
For more conversations like this with our 3 intrepid leaders, go to joshuadavidling.com and check out more of Poets at War.
God of song